Hello, and welcome today to the Wonderfully Made Conference. Again, I'm Doc Hensley, Executive Director and Founder of SOAR Special Needs, and SOAR is just so happy to be able to be a major sponsor of this conference and be able to bring this to you. I truly hope that you have been learning and finding that you can find strength for today and hope for tomorrow. That has been our prayer for you. I just want to take a minute again and thank our amazing worship. That was the Sunflower Ringers. They are from Matthew's ministry at the United Methodist Church of the Resurrection in Leawood, Kansas. Their handbell choir is for differently abled individuals, and it's composed of high school and adult members ages 14 and up. And they have been a big part of our conference now for a couple of years, and we are so blessed to have them. And that was just such a blessing to be able to hear. So Sunflower Ringers, thank you so much for being a part of us, and we loved having you. Again, I want to remind everyone, we have so many great things going on, but it's impossible to be able to see all of our talks at one time. We have thumb drive that you can get that will have most of the PowerPoints and the handouts on it. You can get that on our website, and you can also get our VIP package. Our VIP package will allow you to have every single talk that we have whenever you want it for an entire year. And it is the best deal out there. You want to make sure you do that. On top of that, we will be adding new talks throughout the year for you that are not even during the conference. So we'll continue to add to that, but that will only be for our VIP subscribers. Well, now it is time for our keynote today. And our keynote today is going to be from a guy who's just an amazing individual. And he is a self-advocate. And that's one of the things I'm really in loving. We got so many self-advocates that are speaking at the conference this year. But today, it's Travis Davis, and he's going to be our keynote. Let me tell you about Travis. Travis Davis is from Albuquerque, New Mexico. He was born with cerebral palsy. Disability advocacy is important to him, and he uses his voice to promote awareness through his podcast, Off the Crutch podcast. Travis studied undergraduate at Azusa Pacific University and received a Master's of Adapted Physical Education from the University of New Mexico. Trust me, you want to make sure you check out Travis's podcast, Off the Crutch. And this keynote's going to be a little different. First part is going to be just his one-on-one keynote. The second part, we are doing a special version of the Talk with Doc webinar, where we get to learn a little bit more about Travis. And you can see what our Talk with Doc webinars are all about every week. So you can learn more about Travis's podcast as well as SOAR's Talk with Doc webinar. So without further ado, it is my honor now to introduce and welcome my friend, Travis Davis.
Hello everybody, my name is Travis Davis. I'm 32 years old. I have two loving parents, Stan and Joanne, and a younger brother named Derek. When I was born prematurely. Out of the womb, the doctors noticed that I had a heart murmur, and they had to do emergency open heart surgery to fix the hole in my heart. Later, they discovered that there was a lack of oxygen that was going in my brain. That caused them to diagnose me with cerebral palsy. You might be wondering what cerebral palsy is. There are 4 different types, but I just want to share what it means for me personally. I have what's called spastic diplegia. Spastic diplegia just affects the lower part of my body. This causes my muscles to be stiff and my walking to be unstable. Throughout my life, I've used different forms of mobility aids. I've used a walker, crutches, and now even a wheelchair. Right after I was born, I had a second open heart surgery within 6 months. Doctors had given up on me but my parents and God didn't. And because of that, I knew I was meant to be alive. After I got done with this 6-month period and got older, I began to transition into elementary school. And that opened up so many opportunities for me. I can remember one time in PE class, we would play kickball. And in kickball, I had a hard time running the bases, so I always needed help. And I had a friend, Seth, who would run the bases for me because I couldn't run. Thankfully, Seth was very fast. And that time showed me that my friends were compassionate and that they wanted to help me through any activity that we did. I have another story of my last surgery. A week before, I was in class and a friend of mine brought me into another room. Little did I know it was a distraction for what would be a surprise party for my last and 13th surgery. I came back next year with both my legs in casts. I surprised my friends at school, and they were so happy to see me, and they signed my casts, and that was such a cool feeling for me. And I loved how encouraging and supportive my friends were during that time. As I transitioned into high school, my love for basketball started to grow, and I became the manager of the high school boys basketball team. The coach was so wonderful in letting me be a part of the team, and I remember going to trips almost every weekend with the team. The camaraderie and the support that they gave me was wonderful, and it even gave me a little bit of a coaching bug that I would develop down the line. After I graduated high school, I transitioned into college. And a lot of parents, they don't have the means to support their children with disabilities to send them to college, but thankfully that my parents did. I went to Azusa Pacific University, and I got my degree in English. One moment that stands out to me the most is a time I was sitting at lunch with my friend Michael. 3 of his friends came, Michelle, Jillian, and Kelly. They sat down and I started sharing my story with them about how I became disabled and why I use a wheelchair around campus. I left that time with them very positive, and the next day they knocked on my apartment door with a list. And this list was ways that they wanted to help me support other people with disabilities on campus. I was so grateful and amazed that they did this that I wanted to get right to work. I wanted to see what God was doing in me and with this group to impact the lives of people at my university. We had a lot of fun times during this period, and after I graduated on time, I moved back home and I started substitute teaching for 3 years at my high school alma mater. And those 3 years taught me so much about being an educator, but also about teaching others who don't have disabilities about disabilities. Disability awareness is important to me, and being in the classroom and sharing my story and talking about other people with disabilities impacted their lives just as much as they helped me. The story of how I started playing wheelchair basketball is very unique. One night, my parents were coming home from a business meeting in St. Louis when my mom recognized a crutch tip and saw that it was different than what I had. She went over to my dad and asked if we could get some of those for me. A young boy nearby overheard that and went up to my parents and asked if I had a disability. They said yes, and he invited them to bring me to a wheelchair basketball practice. I spent 4 years playing wheelchair basketball, and during that time period, it brought a lot of joy. I was able to be around a community of people that looked like me, that even walked like me, or couldn't walk. And that brought a lot of sense of stability and calmness with my disability. One person that was instrumental in my life during that time was my coach. My coach grew up with polio, and he struggled throughout his years. My coach was able to battle through adversity and become a judge, a well-known judge in the community. Unfortunately, he died last year, but some of the things that he's instilled in me back then, I still keep with me now. It's very important to have a community of like-minded people and other people with disabilities when you're going through a season like this. When I played wheelchair basketball, it allowed me the opportunity to go to so many places around the country. I traveled 3 or 4 times a year, and I remember my parents coming with me on every single trip. In fact, my dad was the van driver. He would load all of us up, 5 of us, twice as many wheelchairs, because when you play wheelchair basketball, you need a lot of chairs. My time in basketball also brought a lot of lows. That included death and how to cope with grief. I knew a lot of friends that had passed away due to their disabilities. Some people with disabilities die sooner than others without disabilities. The life expectancy for somebody with cerebral palsy is as average as someone who doesn't have a disability. But if I didn't have that experience playing wheelchair basketball, I wouldn't know what it's like to be on a team, to be disciplined. Being on a team of wheelchair basketball taught me to enjoy life to its fullest and to enjoy every single moment. Now, my parents, they introduced me to basketball, but they also motivated me, taught me great values, taught me about God, and strengthened my faith. I want to share with you the importance of a parent's role in a child's life who have a disability. On day one, it was a roller coaster of emotions for my parents when they had me. There was a lot of fear and a lot of unknowns. Thankfully, they were able to get past that, and a decision they had to make was whether or not to have a second child. Thankfully, they did. I have a younger brother, as I mentioned before. His name is Derek, and he's able-bodied. We get along great, and I'm so thankful for his support throughout the years. A lot of times, parents who have children with disabilities, they face a lot of hardships, including financial. I remember so many times going to the hospitals and my parents having to pay so many doctor bills and medical bills. That can add up over time. Thankfully, we have the means to do all that, but there are a lot of parents out there who don't. But there are resources that can help, like SOAR. Another thing that I saw my parents struggle with is time alone. Having a child with a disability can be time-consuming, and your focus is all on them. And that is also something that parents with children with disabilities face. I'm grateful that my parents were able to instill such great values in me. And there's a lot of sacrifice that also comes with having a child with a disability. My parents sacrificed so much with school, taking me to places, and supporting me in the things that I wanted to do as I grew older. The ministry of SOAR is so important to the lives of people with disabilities because they provide resources to families who have children with disabilities. And it's important that organizations like this exist because they help with so many of the hardships that families face. It can be so difficult when you don't have anybody to turn to, but organizations like SOAR help with that. I want to leave you all with some words of hope. If anybody that's watching who has a disability, or if you're a parent of a child with a disability, I want you to know that there are ministries out there like SOAR and other ministries that help support people with disabilities. You don't have to do this alone. I want to be an example of someone who has faced adversity through patience, support, and my faith. I hope you all have enjoyed this talk, and you can contact me below with my email address. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all soon. Thanks.
Well, welcome everybody to the Wonderfully Made conference. And Welcome to this special edition of Talk with Doc. And it is my honor today to have Travis Davis. We just heard his keynote address, and I just wanted to take a little bit extra time and just have a conversation with Travis. He's a great guy, and I just want everyone to learn a little bit more about him. And as well, you know, he did a great job propping up SOAR, but I want to make sure, first off, everyone knows about his amazing podcast. If you guys have not subscribed to it, please get out there and subscribe to it. It's called Off the Crutch Podcast. So first off, right off the bat, Travis, welcome. Thank you for joining me. Why don't you just take a minute and tell us all about your podcast and where everyone can find it to subscribe?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Doc. I really appreciate it. My podcast, like you said, it's called Off the Crutch Podcast, and I've been doing it for about 2 months now, and I wanted to share more about my life living with a disability and the things that I go through, as well as sharing stories from other people who have disabilities or others that work in the disability community. So I thought during this crazy, unthinkable time that we're in, I wanted to provide people with some content while there might be at home, and just thought this would be just an opportunity for them to learn more about disabilities from a personal perspective.
Yeah. So that's great. So, you know, you can find it out there on Apple podcasts and just anywhere that you go to get your podcast, you can find that, but it's Off the Crutch podcast. So make sure you subscribe to it. They're great. Most of them are fairly short, but quick listens, but a lot of great information. So please go out there today and check that out. But Travis, just want to take a minute and learn a little bit more about you. Why don't you just take a minute and just share how God has been a part of your journey and how God's helped you in dealing with your disability?
Sure. And that's, I could probably go on for hours and hours about that, but I'll give you sort of a succinct version of that. So when I was born, I had a hole in my heart, as I had mentioned in my keynote. And as I got older, I began to learn more about God when I went to parochial school. So I think one of the great things about SOAR in itself is that it encapsulates so many faith denominations. Mm-hmm. And myself being Catholic, it not only shaped how I learned about God, but it also strengthened my ability to push through adversity with my disability. So growing up, my family was very much encouraging myself and my brother to go to church and learning more about God and reading the Bible and praying. That was really big growing up. And I think that had a lot to do with how I was able to strengthen my faith in times of adversity. And now during this, again, crazy time, I'm able to use and rely upon that strength as I figure out like what's going on in my life.
Right. And that's so true. And you know, honestly, that goes right along with the whole theme for our conference. You know, God gives us strength for today, allows us to have the strength to make it through today, but at the same time gives us that hope for tomorrow. And that's what I love. So thank you so much for sharing that. You know, I want to take a minute and go back. Like I said, I've really enjoyed your podcast. You had brought up one point and I can't remember what podcast it was, so I apologize. But in one of your podcasts, you made a comment that, you know, talking about, you know, I forget exactly how you said it, but like, you know, superstars and that, but basically said that you really thought that all individuals with disabilities really are celebrities. I think that was
Correct.
They're
Yes.
celebrities.
Yes.
Because wherever you go, people are looking at you just like a celebrity. And I loved how you were talking about it. Would you just kind of unpack that a little bit and talk about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. It wasn't until maybe my sophomore year in college, I was doing a creative writing class, and I started to kind of get this idea about disabilities, people with disabilities, and the relationship or the parallel with celebrities. And, you know, able-bodied people, they're not, parking in handicap parking spots right up front. The only ones that really do that sort of thing are celebrities. They have
Right.
either like chauffeurs, people with disabilities, some that can't drive. They normally have someone that drives them. So celebrities also have people that drive them. Also, the fact that you go out, even now, when I go out to like a Target or a Walmart and I'm using my crutches or my wheelchair, people will stare at me because there's not a lot of people with disabilities out there in the world because we're the biggest minority. And so if you're not exposed to it, then you're seen as just maybe odd, or just people are just curious about it. If a
Right.
celebrity walks into uh, a store, normally they have to be in incognito or else they'll be recognized and everyone will want to go up to them. I mean, so maybe it's a little bit of a silly comparison, but I thought, you know what, it kind of fits. And so at least with me growing up personally, I've always felt a little bit of a celebrity just because eyes just tend to be on me. And, whether that's good or bad, I don't know, but I use that as a way to um, spread positivity and
Right.
encouragement through my disability. So,
Yeah. For me personally, I'd rather be around individuals with disability than around celebrities. They're a lot more fun to be around.
yeah, for
Um,
sure.
but
Definitely.
but I think that's so true. And again, just something for any of our families who are watching, this today, that, reminder, hey, don't don't get upset when you're getting all the, the looks, the stares, the weird comments, all those things. Unfortunately, it's part of life. And we've got to learn to just how allow that to bounce off of us, and focus. And one of my words in life, Travis, is perspective. We've got to change our perspective, and instead of focusing on the negative things, instead of focusing on what people are saying negative, let's find some positive things to focus on. Hey, look, we were able to get out today. We got to do this, we got to do that. And we can't sit here and worry about what others say about us. And that's one thing I love about you. You persevere, you push on, despite what someone else may tell you you can't do, or not. So I think that's something, hopefully today you can be a great encouragement to our families, as well to our individuals with disabilities. You're employed, you're got a job, you're a teacher, and do that great things. I truly believe that every individual with a disability can work and be employed. And that's one of the heart for us at SOAR, that we want to help every individual with disability get employed and do something with that. And so, I love you and your heart with that. Why don't you, kind of share your thoughts with employment and disability?
Yeah, and that's a big issue. I've been in committee meetings here locally in Albuquerque around Section 14C, about the sub minimum wage,
Yes.
and how there are nonprofit organizations here who are very pro 14C, which just boggles my mind. And I think our governor is going to help with doing away with that here in our state, which would just be an amazing thing. I've always felt, and I talked about this on a recent podcast episode, that people with disabilities would really make great entrepreneurs. And I say that for a couple reasons. One of which is a lot of times people with disabilities, they have doctor's appointments to go to or physical therapy. So maybe working a 9 to 5 job isn't so much conducive to their lifestyle. I think back to when I was in grad school and I was doing physical therapy. I would do physical therapy in the morning and then go to grad school in the evening and just be so tired by the end of it. And I'm just thinking to myself, if I had a 9 to 5 and I needed to do physical therapy, when would I have the time to do it? Sure, maybe I could do it at the end. My employer could give me an accommodation to do it at the end of work. Well, by that time, I'm so tired that it really doesn't really do my body much good if I can't really do the exercises.
Right.
So I'm really pro entrepreneurship, and I think there should be more resources out there for individuals with disabilities. I know vocational rehabilitation, they do a great job of supporting the individual with disabilities in their goal of becoming employed. But yeah, I don't believe that individuals with disabilities should be paid sub minimum wage. They deserve the same
Amen.
amount of wages that any able-bodied person gets.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of, brings up a whole nother topic that, kind of reminds me of something that I think is starting to come to light through COVID and through our time here right now. And that's the term ableism.
Mm.
It's starting to become a hot topic, and, a lot of people may just now start hearing about that. But I think we as a community, a disability community, we need to stand up and start allowing our voice to be heard, and let people realize just how unfair many systems are, how hard it is for our families to do many different things, and how we are actually discriminated against in so many different areas, whether it be education or vocation or even housing, whatever it might be. But it is time for us to stand up and be heard. It is time for nonprofit organizations. I really believe we need to stop fighting as ourselves, but linking arms one to and another. It's the whole reason that tobacco gets so much done in DC, because they've all come together instead of fighting for their own group. Disability organizations need to come together. I love, Down Syndrome Guild. I love, Cerebral Palsy Association and so on and so forth. But everyone's fighting for their own part. And as a result, everyone's fighting against each other. We all need to come together. But why don't you just share, kind of your thoughts on ableism and how we can stand up, how we can start to make a voice and try to make change.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of great points. When I was in grad school, I got my master's in adapted physical education. And some of the courses that I took were physical disabilities and causes, motor learning for persons with disabilities. I was the only person in my cohort that had a physical disability or a disability of any kind.
Wow.
So I would do a lot of educating to my classmates on these issues because they were brand new to them. Not so much to me. From the physical assessment standpoint, I learned a lot. But you're absolutely right. You have physical spaces that are difficult for an individual with a disability to get into. If there's stairs and there's not a ramp, the building is old, and the business is not doing their part to accommodate the person. That's why I think universal design is so important to our society, to make sure that every single person and ability is accounted for and thought of in the process of making designs for buildings. Um, and it goes back to, I think you had mentioned mindset, the mindset of a person to change, shifting away from ableism into this more inclusive mindset where we're not discriminating against a person with a disability, whether it's because they're trying to find a job, if they're trying to get into a building, if they're trying to get access to healthcare. So there's a lot of things that goes on with ableism, and it just goes back to the mindset. And I think that's why I enjoy being inside a classroom, talking to students who don't have physical disabilities, because even like elementary school kids, and I tell them and I ask them, I, I tell them the importance of disability awareness, and then I ask them, like, why do you think it's important? And I let them know that, one day they're going to be like CEOs or leaders, people in positions of power to make decisions regarding disability policy. And and even if they're looking to hire somebody with a disability, they have this knowledge now at a younger age. They're going to internalize it, and hopefully as they grow up, they take that knowledge and they they do something positive with it in regards to disabilities.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, if we can all just uh, start making our voice heard and stand up, and I think all too many times, it's just easier sometimes to not say something
Mm,
because we're tired.
mm,
As parents, as caregivers, life is hard. Life is difficult, and trying to sit there and be an advocate. You're already being an advocate for your child, but then to try to fight even more. Sometimes you just say, it's just not worth it. I don't have the time. But it doesn't take a lot. Sometimes it could just be a letter to a congressman or senator, or to your state officials to make change,
mm.
to see what you can do to help there. But again, I think we all need to step up and help through that. So thank you. Why don't we just take a minute? And one of the things I absolutely love with you, Travis, is how much of a self advocate you are. And you encourage others with disabilities to fight for themselves and be advocate for themselves. Why don't you take a minute or two and talk on the importance it is for you to be an advocate for individuals with disabilities?
Sure. I think I also want to touch on why I think it's important to be a self advocate. I
Yeah.
think it goes along with your mission and the questions. One of the questions that you ask about who's going to provide when the parents are gone. And I
Right.
think
Right.
that's the most important thing about being a self advocate is you want to know, what Social Security is like, or SSI, what SSDI is, all these things that you're going to have to live with for the rest of your life, that maybe up to a certain point your parents helped you with X, Y, and Z, but as you get to be an adult, you need to learn these things because they're not going to be there forever. So that's why I think it's important for people with disabilities to be self advocates if they are able to. And when I say if they're able to, it's because with disabilities, there's so many. And with that, there's such a variety of them. Not everybody is verbal. So people that are nonverbal, yes, they do have assistive devices that help them speak, but not everybody has that. So then how are those individuals able to be self-advocates? That I don't have the answer to. So that's why I say if you're able. Uh,
Sure.
just being an advocate myself, I've been given the ability um, uh, to to speak and to be mobile in ways that maybe other people with disabilities can't be. And so I think because of that, I have a voice to use that in a positive way. So whether it's directing somebody to a website for vocational rehabilitation, whether that's helping them get um, services within their local independent living center, um, even Social Security questions. And even when I was coaching basketball, I think being around other people, other kids with disabilities to show them like, yes, you can go to college, you can
Mhm.
graduate, you can do all the things. I think back to the coach that I had many, many years ago. Unfortunately, he passed away last year, but he was a very prominent judge here in our city, and he had polio, but that did not deter him for wanting to become a judge. And in fact, when he was trying to become a judge at that age, he would use crutches, and people told him that his crutches would be a distraction in the courtroom. And that was farthest from the truth, because he was one of the most successful judges that we had here in the city. So I think looking up to him as a role model, I want other kids with disabilities to look up to me to see that anything's possible.
Yeah, I love that. And you can be the voice for those who don't have a voice
Sure.
with it. So absolutely. And so again, thank you for what you're doing. And at the same time, for our individuals who may be more severe, who would not be able to be self-advocates, those who, like you said, may be nonverbal and not have devices to be able to do it, and so on and so forth. I'll call out and speak to our parents, our caregivers. It's your job to be the advocate for your child and to fight for them. And I know many of you are already doing it. You are doing an amazing job. And I just want to take a minute and thank you. Thank you for your child, for all the amazing things that you are doing. But don't give up. Don't lose hope. If you lose a battle here or there, it just means you may have to fight a little bit harder next time, or try to find some resources to try to come alongside you. Try to find an organization that might be able to link arms with you and others. And again, when we become a team in fighting for one another, everybody wins with it. So I think those are some of the great and very cool things that we could do with that. Travis, why don't you just let's talk a little bit more about your Off the Crutch podcast. First off, and I don't remember, I apologize. And I think you may be changing the days it premieres, but share when it premieres, and do you have any upcoming topics that you got coming?
Sure. So, I was trying to test out to see if I wanted to release them on Wednesday. They normally come out on Mondays, so I'm going to keep it that way. But I'm also thinking about adding a second day during the week, because I get a lot of people who are interested in being interviewed on my podcast. And the great thing about podcasts is that you can listen to them anywhere.
Right.
And I want to be conscious of people's time. So I don't necessarily want to create maybe like a 30, 40-minute podcast. While there's nothing wrong with that, I think where I'm at this time, I would like to break them up into smaller pieces. So I'm thinking about adding just a interview-only day of the week where I release the interviews I do with people. And it's interesting you asked me about upcoming topics, because I was watching the news yesterday, and a young girl was on it with her teacher, and they're in a sort of working to get the Bitmoji sort of app sort of changed, or I should say they're looking to get more representation of disabilities added onto the app.
The app. Oh, that's awesome.
So, yeah. So it was on a national news channel, and they were both being interviewed. And so like right away I went and I found her on social media, and I reached out to see if I could have her on the podcast to talk about, this issue that didn't even really occur to me. But it makes a lot of sense, because now you have toys and other different I don't know what you call them, just other different toys now that are being more inclusive. And you already have the emojis that have done a great job of being inclusive. So, why not the Bitmojis? So that totally makes sense. So that's going to be upcoming here pretty soon.
Awesome. So again, encourage everyone to make sure you check out Travis's talks. It's Off the Crutch Podcasts. You can find them on Apple and wherever you go to get your podcasts. And like Travis said, most of them are fairly short. Most are in the 8 to 15 minute range. So perfect, for me, like when I'm driving, perfect to be able to listen to there, or if you're out, take a walk or something, great to listen to. But a lot of great thought-provoking things in there. So check it out. You want to make sure you do that. But Travis, we appreciate you being a part of our Wonderfully Made conference. And again, I could just go on and continue to talk with you on several subjects quite a while. I will have you on a regular talk with Doc at another point in the future where we can go on a little bit further. But we are coming, unfortunately, to a close for this keynote session. And hopefully this has just been a little bit more time where our attendees have been able to learn a little bit more about Travis. And again, I hope that they will, everyone will go out and subscribe to your podcast, check that out. I encourage you to also check out our Talk with Doc webinar every Friday. That you can find that through our SOAR website, soarspecialneeds.org. Both of these are great resources for your family, for ministries as well. So with all that, we want to thank you. Travis will be available after the talk today to handling Q&A with you, and great guys. So any questions you have, come and we'll have a virtual Q&A where you can see him, talk to him just like we are right now. So again, Travis, thank you so much, and wish all of you a great day and enjoy the conference. God bless. Bye-bye.
Much, Doc.
Thank you so much, Travis, for such an amazing talk. We wanted to share a short clip with you from an organization here in Kansas City that focuses on advocacy. RISE is a nonprofit dance studio that partners with local organizations in the area of relationships, community involvement, spiritual formation, and education embracing arts. Let's watch this short clip to see all the amazing things that RISE has to offer.